BS-Free Witchcraft is a production of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Nerd and Tie produces podcasts ranging from actual play to true crime, and you can find more at nerdandtie.com or join our Discord by going to nerdandtie.com/Discord. Welcome to BS-Free Witchcraft, your monthly guide to the modern witchcraft movement, minus a lot of the usual BS. I'm your host, Trey Dorn, and it is October. Well, it's October 31st for most of the people listening to this show, or it's after that. The Patreon people have this a week early, but anyone who's been listening to my show since it launched knows that the October episode, we're going to get spooky. It also means this is going to be a big chonker of an episode, folks. Get ready for the long haul, because there's a lot this year. Because in the past 2 years, I've had a guest on during this episode. This year, I have three guests. Joining me this episode are going to be Gen Prock of the Nerd and Tie Podcast and Stormwood and Associates, who's one of my co-hosts on those two other shows. I am also on those other shows, so go ahead and listen to them or something. I don't know. Also joining me, though, will be Cris Sass-Council of Let's Be Legendary, also on the Nerd and Tie Network, which you can find more at nerdandtie.com/legendary. And also joining me is returning guest Bree NicGarran, who I'm pretty sure is the person who's been on the show the most who isn't me. And she's also the host of Hex Positive. She was also my guest last year, but she's got some fresh stories that we didn't talk about last year. So, as opposed to me, who I recycle my same ones year and year again, because, well, there's something new in there later in the show. But in any case, there's so much episode ahead of us that I could sit here just rambling about anything, or we could just bring on the first guest and get into the tales of spooks. Because, again, this is the Halloween episode on the Witchcraft Podcast, guys. This is what we do here. So, let's do that. Joining me on the podcast right now is Gen Prock of the Nerd and Tie Podcast and Stormwood and Associates, of which I am also on those shows. And if you're not listening to those shows, you should be, because again, I'm on those shows too, guys. Come on. But anyways, hi, Gen.
Hi.
And we are talking spooky stories.
Yeah.
So we're talking about our spooky stories this episode. So and Gen, you have spooky stories.
I do. I have encountered ghosts. Oh yeah. Get ready for me to ramble.
That's okay. These people are used to hearing me ramble on a monthly basis, so they're all prepped for rambling.
Well, the funny thing is, if you tune into Hex Positive's spooky episode, I submitted these stories to Bree as well. So
I think my Patreon subscribers are going to get this episode before the Hex Positive episode, but I think the Hex Positive episode might come out before this hits the public feed. So
yeah, so whatever.
We're both spoiling each other.
Yeah. That's what friends do, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, so my story takes place at a summer camp. I worked at the summer camp for a great many number of years, and the land that it's on is very old. It has been a summer camp at least, I think, since the 50s. A scout camp, I should specify.
Okay. Are you willing to say where this camp is?
Northern Wisconsin.
Okay. So we're not going to admit where this camp is. I understand.
No, I because I might get things wrong.
That's okay.
because
And
they're from my memory.
there's
Um,
there are dozens of scout camps in northern Wisconsin, so you're not really.
yeah, and I don't know how much of some of the traditions they want like being leaked out, so I'm gonna keep it
Gotcha.
vague
Okay,
out of respect for them.
that's fine.
Um,
The last thing we need is one of the listeners for this show getting in their head to go investigate, and then like a bunch of Boy Scouts are just shocked, and then like there's a fight where the ghost hunting listener of the show gets in a fight with a bunch of Boy Scouts, and the Boy Scouts know
Yeah,
how
you
to
don't
tie
want that.
knots, and
Yeah, they're
it
really
does
good.
not go well.
They
At
know
least
fire.
they've got hatchets and pocket knives. Your EMF meter's not going to do anything.
So yeah, let's see. I'm just trying to decide which one to go with first. I guess I'll go like least interaction to most interaction.
Okay.
I guess. I don't know. So on the property and are a number of like small cabins, most of which are used for housing people, usually for like staff people, but one of them is kind of this special lodge. It's dedicated to a very special lady. I forget why she was special. curse this like
it's okay
mental
to you could have just pretended you were anonymizing
memory.
it. You could have just pretended that like you were just trying to be vague on purpose. But no, you've just admitted that you don't remember.
Yeah, I have a really bad memory these days.
Don't don't we all?
I don't know. Basically, there's this special cabin. I believe it was one of the first cabins on the property. I just know that like before I even came to the camp, it was like the arts and crafts area, I believe, and then that got moved to a different, bigger building. But we always used it as a place, and I don't want to sound hokey, but we used it for a ceremony.
It's okay to be hokey.
But yeah, we used to hold a ceremony in there, basically to celebrate campers who would come to camp for recurring years. So if you came back to camp a certain number of years in a row, they would give you a bracelet, and for each recurring year, they would give you a bead on it, and we'd do like this little ceremony, basically just celebrating that you decided to come back year after year after year.
Well, that's nice.
And yeah, and it was a beautiful little ceremony. We would do it in the middle of the night, so we would go around all of camp, wake up the campers like from they were sleeping, and we would like tromp through the forest at night and bring them to this cabin. We'd have a fire in the fireplace going, and maybe a few candles, and that's it. And we'd have them all sit, and we'd do the little ceremony, and it was really peaceful and really nice. Basically, in this cabin, and I believe like this is corroborated by other staff members. All of these stories are, well, not one of them. Most of them are. This one definitely. You would go into this cabin, and a great sense of like peace and maybe like warmth, like someone was there and like was watching over you. If you were in there by yourself, you would hear footsteps like throughout another part of the cabin. And yeah, that was pretty much it, where it's just like a feeling
Yeah.
you get, and then you would maybe hear phantom noises if you were by yourself.
Yeah. That's footsteps are always the mysterious footsteps are always like one of those, like, it's always hard to say, like, is that noise caused by something that just sounds like what you think it is, or is it actually like happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Oh yeah, it's hard to corroborate, but like I do have other people who have said like they had the exact same experience of
well,
like being
it's
in there and like, oh yeah, yep, I heard footsteps when like nobody was around, and you can
right.
tell when people are around because like you can hear the crunch of like the gravel trails
Gotcha. Well,
outside,
yeah,
like
it's,
the leaves and everything.
I mean, the only reason I'm not like trying to discount anything, it's just that,
No.
like, in my experience, like, so, and I've talked about this place. I actually probably talk about it in this episode. I don't remember. I'm recording these interviews out of order. And they're going into the episode in a different order than I recorded them. But I know I've talked about in previous years that, like, my high school's theater was haunted, and like I've had, like, I know 100% that it's haunted. Like, I saw things that are unexplainable. But
Nice.
also, one of the legends about that haunt was that people heard footsteps on the back stairs, and what it turns out that those like people thought they heard someone going up and down this back flight of stairs, because it was a set of metal steps that led up to like the riggings, but what it turned out to be that the fire door above the stage, because they had an emergency fire system which was like effectively a big thing of water that like would open up to douse flames, because it's an old building, and it was those fire suppression things like knocking up against each other on a high wind day is what caused the sounds of the footsteps.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why it's like whenever like we get into like mysterious sounds, I'm always like, ooh, but it could be, because like there's a spot that is 100% haunted, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have seen the ball of light form in the middle of a room with my own 2 eyes. That ghost is there, right? Like,
yeah.
But there is a ghost there, but that spooky sound that freaked a lot of people out was 100% mundane. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I think is that like you don't know until you debunk it.
Right. That's one of those things where that was a haunting I was trying to debunk, and then I saw like the thing, and I was like, oh no, the shit's real.
Right.
I didn't mean to throw you off track or anything.
No. That's pretty much it with the first one. Not much to actually like witness.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone ever witnessed anything with that first one. It's just like this particular cabin. We're pretty sure there's a benevolent spirit in here.
Well, at the very least, there's the culmination of all the positive energy that was going into that. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's not even if it's not an intelligent haunt, like it's which we use words like that, like we know what we're talking about. It's not intelligent, you know, whether or not it's an intelligent haunt, as if we have like people who firmly categorize things with terms we always make it sound like we're being fancy, but I believe that, you know, energy that we put out like can end up in a space, you know, and if it's a place that is primarily used for like this positive, affirming, like communal ceremony, then I think that space can take on that energy, whether or not there's like anything, you know, beyond that energy there. You know what I mean? It's just the hey man, it's the positive vibes we put into the space. Like I cannot say it without sounding like a complete hippy dippy weirdo, but I also genuinely think it. So it's again the contradiction of my entire personality. So what happened to other places there?
Well, the second one, so I worked actually as the camp cook. I worked in the kitchen for a number of years. And funnily enough, there's a kitchen ghost.
Of course there is.
Of course there is. I'm thinking this one would be like pretty easily debunkable, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So what it would do, I never actually saw anything.
The ghost is in the room with you right now. I heard the door squeak. I'm leaving that in. So listeners, that's just Eric.
Yeah, asking me if I fed the cats. But no, again, if you're alone in there, definitely hear footsteps going through the kitchen. I would find burners turned on.
Okay.
Right? I would find like the knob turned and I'd be like, no, turn that off. Because I could hear the gas and I'd be like, nope, we're gonna turn that off. Oh. And my theory is that it is the ghost of someone who used to work in this kitchen, and they're just trying to go around and do like their usual stuff they're gonna do.
Or
like,
they're trying to turn on the gas to blow up the place.
Like, cook.
Or he's trying to turn the gas on to burn down the place.
Right.
The disgruntled former camp cook.
And I would just have to go around and be like, no, we're not gonna do this. No, you can't.
Fill
actually
it with propane or natural gas,
to.
whatever the gas is in this place.
Or like
propane because
the door to the walk-in freezer would just like be weirdly open. Like it didn't latch. It wasn't like latched all the way. Like somebody pulled the handle and like left it open. So just like weird little stuff that honestly could technically be explained by like, oh, I was passing by the ovens and like my hip bumped one of the burner knobs and that was me.
Right.
Or like the footsteps were just somebody passing through the kitchen and I just like didn't see them. So this one like is a little bit more debunkable, but I like to believe that there is like a kitchen ghost who's just like trying desperately to like cook things, but he can't.
Yeah. I don't know enough about whether or not like pressure from gas I don't think it can turn a knob. I don't think that I'd be really terrified of a stove if that was possible.
No, but I never saw that otherwise.
Right.
Like that would happen very rarely.
Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. And other people who have worked in the kitchen can corroborate. Like like, because one of the things we would talk about at like as staff people is like, oh yeah, this like, oh, did you sense this ghost today? Oh yeah, they did this and blah 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 blah. You know, we'd like casually talk about like the ghosts of camp.
Yeah.
At least those two. Those two are pretty well known to others. The third one, I'm the only one who ever saw it.
Okay.
And it freaked me out because it was so the
had
kitchen,
your oh shit ghosts are real moment.
Yeah,
a
little bit. That was it because okay, so the kitchen is in a building that has a big basement, and the bathrooms happen to be in the basement, not on the first level. And so I was, going downstairs to the bathroom, blah, 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 blah. I come out of the bathroom, and the main room of the basement is this huge, it's just one big room, cinder block walls, and it's got a row of windows along one side, looking out onto the play field. And it was a gorgeous, beautiful, sunny day. And settle down. I know this brings back spooky memories, but and I saw a figure standing by one of these windows, looking out. And it was a girl. She had long brown hair in braids and was wearing a red and white striped shirt. And she had her back toward. I did not see a face.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing like legs or feet. I think she had like her arms up like on the windowsill as she was looking out. But yeah, I like as soon as I saw that, I booked it upstairs and did not go back down until there were other people in the building with me.
That is wow.
So yeah.
Okay,
I
now
saw a ghost.
that's genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And like I don't think there was absolutely any ill intent because she didn't notice me at all.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it was just it just like startled me so bad.
Yeah.
To see something, and then I was just like, I'm out. I'm gone.
The first time you see something clearly and directly, and it's right there, it's like, I don't know, like in my experience, like a lot of us had that experience where we thought we believed in ghosts, and then you have that one real, like, that for me it was just a ball of light forming in the middle of the room. For you, apparently, it was a terrifying specter. But
yeah.
like you have that moment where you're like, oh shit, I have no, like, it's the oh shit, ghosts are real moment. I don't have a better, it's, because I believed in ghosts before that, like before I had that experience, but then I didn't find out that I believe that's when I really believed in ghosts.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And like I fully, I don't know, I'm still like on the fence whether they're real or not, but I do fully enjoy like everything about ghosts. I'd like one of my favorite shows is freaking Ghost Adventures. Like, but only because like they're so stupid and I enjoy their
they
stupidity.
fake half their stuff.
Exactly. It's so dumb.
Because they are desperate to see things because they need ratings.
Yep. And it's great to drink too.
If you want to know like some real tea about Ghost Adventures, go listen to one of the Hex Positive did an episode earlier this month. The episode they released, the episode Bree released at the beginning of the month, has some strong tea about Ghost Adventures in it. And but you know, so like I mean, obviously you saw something though, so something was real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't
and the fact that it like looked like a young girl mainly because of the height.
Yeah.
I'm just like, was that like a dead camper I saw?
Well, I think it's so hard to say because like it.
Yeah. I
so
have
there
no idea.
There are a lot of like what ghosts are is such a complicated thing. Like I don't know how much I believe the ghosts are the spirits of dead humans. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I buy into that. Because first off, what would make us special and not every other animal in the world? And you know, if there were ghost squirrels, they'd be pissing us off constantly, right? Like, I do believe that there are things that are composed of some sort of energy or something that exist. I have encountered them. I have dealt with them. I have seen them take on humanoid form. But like I've seen what looks like a person where there shouldn't be a person.
Yeah.
But mine, you know, I had that weird moment. Like it's so when I was one time I had been like I was back. I don't remember if I was back from college or if it was I'd no longer lived in Milwaukee, but I was visiting Milwaukee and I was hanging out with two of my friends outside of one of their houses, and the friend lived on a dead end street, and so we were just standing in the street, and I watched like what looked like a translucent person run from between two houses to behind my car. And I saw that and I just looked at my two friends. I was like, did you just see that? And then one of them, like, you mean the guy who just ran behind your car, but you could see through him? Like, it was like, yeah. And so one of my friends chased him out from behind my car, and we didn't see and so he was standing we didn't see him when he was back in direct light, but then we saw the figure between two houses across the street, just standing there, and all three of us are staring at it. It's one thing, when you see something, you're like, did I hallucinate? I've hallucinated. I get sleep paralysis. So I told the story on last year's podcast, and I'll probably say it again sometime in this episode, but I get sleep paralysis, and so I sometimes hallucinate while I have sleep paralysis. And so my favorite hallucination was I hallucinated the bent neck lady from the Netflix Haunting of Hill House.
Nope.
But here's the thing, is I've had sleep paralysis for so long, and I've hallucinated so many things, and my apartment is very well warded against actual ghosts. I'm a witch. It's what I do. But I woke up and I saw it and I was like, wait, that's literally the bent neck lady from Haunting of Hill House, is what went through my brain. And instead I just it just became funny. It was I know that's not real. I know that's my brain picked that out that specific exact image from a television show that I watched last week. So
that's great.
So but so that's why it's when you get a moment so that's why I'm you get worried that you're hallucinating something, right? That you see a person, but when two other people are standing next to you and you're all seeing it, and someone described what you saw before you said it out loud.
Yep.
You're just oh, shit. And so I don't know what ghosts are. Is it a recording of the past? Is it an emotional imprint? Is it something else that has decided to take on a form that looks like people? I don't know. I have a hard time believing that the dead want to stick around, but I also can't say no. You know what I mean? Anyone who claims to have definitive answers, I immediately don't trust.
Yeah, right? It's such an amalgam of just it could be this, but it could also be this, but it could be
right.
It all.
Look,
it's a big mishmash of we don't know.
I believe there are good things out there, and there are bad things out there, and there are neutral things out there. I lived in a house with a ghost in it for 3 years. And that thing was just irritating. The phrase that I used, and I'll probably say it again sometime this episode, because again, I'm recording these out of order. I don't know what I say in the other interviews, is that it was like having a cat I didn't sign up for. That thing just knocks shit over right in front of you until you yelled at it. It was like a cat. It was like dealing with a cat. Where they raise their paw, and then you look at them, and then you yell at them and they stop, but the minute you look away, they're back up on the table ready to hit that plant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, that was what living with that ghost was like. So I don't know what that girl in the basement was. It could
I don't know either.
Could be a memory. It could just be what
it could have been.
It's a memory. Yeah. It's it's interesting that you have the details down. You know what I mean? You apparently got a pretty good look.
Yeah.
So
it just imprinted.
Yeah.
So vividly, probably just because it was such a weird experience that my brain is just remember that thing that happened to us?
Yeah.
You're gonna remember that real good.
I have seen many things that are very clear, but I haven't seen a person that detailed before. I've seen
and literally all I remember is just her hair and her t-shirt.
Yeah.
I don't remember really anything else about her.
Yeah. I mean, that's still that's
just brown hair, red and white t-shirt.
It'd be hilarious if secretly a camper had broken into the building.
I know. That would have been a great prank on me. But I don't think
Now
it
I'm
was
just
like,
gonna pay Eric to let me sneak in a wig and a t-shirt and put it on like a mop and have it sit in your kitchen. I would never do that to you, but it would still be really funny.
it would be fun.
It would be funny. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah.
We're gonna at this point I'm gonna move on to whatever's happening next, whoever we're talking to next.
Yay.
And or I'll record a transition in post that will sound better than that. Who knows? We'll find out how lazy I am. If you're hearing me say this right now, I was incredibly lazy. Joining me now is Cris Sass-Council of Let's Be Legendary podcast, also here on the Nerd Network. And you can find that at letsbelegendarypodcast.com or nerdandtie.com/legendary. But yeah, welcome to the show, Cris.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We're going around the network this episode because we're talking about spooky
Seeing
stuff.
all the spots.
Well, synergy. It's synergy, right? No, it's
yes.
But yeah, we're talking about ghosts because
very fitting for the season.
Well, especially since this episode goes out to the public feed on October 31st.
So even better.
I know, it's perfect timing this year. The Patreon users will have to make do with having this episode a week early, I guess.
Well,
they'll make that sacrifice. So yeah, I find in my experience that pretty much anyone with any interest in witchcraft at all has probably at one point statistically seen a ghost. That just seems to be the way it works out. Just
that
overall.
Does seem to be. I've noticed that as well. And it's really funny because I'm actually a skeptic, like hardcore skeptic.
Yeah, well, for me, I actually I grew up actually like an atheist, a very firm atheist who later came into Wicca through a strange series of events, which included like the first time I saw a ghost and couldn't explain it. Although I'd already started doing witchcraft at that point. It's true. But I am 100%, and you're gonna, and listeners will hear that later in the show when I talk with Bree NicGarran, where like I am of the mind of let's try to explain this away completely before we assume it's a ghost. Like is this cold spotted draft? Is this? It's like orbs are just nonsense because they're dust particles.
Yeah,
illuminated dust and bugs in the air. A blurry circle near a camera lens. Who would have guessed? Then it's illuminated by a flash. Shocker.
There's something moving slightly in a security camera. Did you check for spider webs right next to the camera?
Well, and I always bring up and I'm gonna talk about this later in the episode, but I always bring up the ghost phone. There's an area in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where I live, where in winter conditions, in the right conditions, there is a phone, and it's either in the office building or the hospital in my neighborhood. I've narrowed it down to that block, but if there's a phone that if it rings in the middle of the night, you can hear it from half a mile away, and it sounds like it's ringing next to you.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. It's 100% an acoustic phenomenon. Like it's
right.
Just the like, because it's a phone. It's like it's so like the typical 80s or 90s digital ringer, like when they first took physical bells out of phones.
Yeah.
Like that stereotypical phone ring. Like it's that. And so it's a phone. It's a phone, but it's like coming from all around you, like all over this part of town. So that's always kind of my baseline of like, can this be explained the way the ghost phone can be explained? Because the ghost phone is not a ghost.
Yeah, I have, like, whenever we watch, I'm also obsessed with those ghost hunter shows. They're my guilty pleasure. And, like, half the time I don't know why I watch them, because I get so irate every time I watch them, especially the Ghost Adventures.
I don't watch Ghost Adventures. I used to watch Ghost Hunters.
Ghost Hunters was fun, because they also had, like, drama attached to it. Yeah. So you had, like, who's pissed off at somebody. Also, there's a ghost, apparently. But the Ghost Adventures, they like, wow, those are some locker room boys. they have the most extreme, and it's not just them, it's a lot of ghost shows are like, it's like, here's this place that's supposedly haunted, and they go into like these really extreme like dramatic reenactments of crap, and like half the stuff that they talk about, it's like, you do know that didn't happen, right?
No, it's my favorite moment while I was ever watching an episode of Ghost Hunters was that I randomly knocked on my coffee table. And on the show at that exact moment, one of them turned around. Did you hear that knocking? And I was just like, I'm the ghost.
It's just me. I had there was, I don't remember which one it was. I think Ghost Adventures got really in trouble recently because they were in a town and somebody like randomly told them that there was a bunch of witches in the area, and then they like said on their show it's like they're responsible for all the satanic shit that's happening, and I'm just like, oh my god,
there are witches in every area. If anything, this show, like, if anything, the audience of this show has proven we're freaking everywhere. Also, like, there's like literally millions of witches. It's God, no, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm always the one that's just like, none of that is true. None of that is right.
Well, like,
I'll sit there and fact check them or like fact correct them. It's like, this is because of this. It's like, no, that's not because of this. It's on Wikipedia, for fuck's sake.
Well, if you listen to like and they talk, Bree talked about this on the October 1st episode of Hex Positive, that also on the Nerd and Tie Network, that like the Ghost Adventures was like propagating like that the Zozo whatever myth of the demon that doesn't exist. Thing. Like, it's not a real thing. And like all like, and they, and like Bree talked about it like at length on her October 1st episode. So I don't want to dig too much into that, but you should listen to that, because like, and it's also like how like all the stuff with like Ouija boards being demonic comes because of the movie The Exorcist. Like, it's but
it's
that's why like
that,
every single like every time I see like there's like some, even like, and this is watching BuzzFeed Unsolved, which is, by the way, the best ghost hunting show ever made by anyone, and they never find anything, and that's why it's great. It's because BuzzFeed Unsolved is the most authentic ghost hunting show ever made. And but there's this one where they're investigating this woman's apartment, and she had said that she also has a YouTube channel though of her own, and she talked about like this thing with the Ouija board and like all this stuff, and like, I'm like, that it's made by Hasbro.
Oh, is that Loey?
I think so.
Loey Lane.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't watch her stuff, so like I only know her from that episode, and I was just going like,
I actually do watch her.
Okay.
I would take everything of what she says. She's one of those YouTubers that like half of her content is really interesting because she covers like interesting things that like happen on TikTok and our what are they called? RIGs? What are they? I forgot what they're called. They're like games that people are playing, but they're fake, but they seem real.
Alternate reality games. ARGs.
Alternate reality. Thank you. My dyslexia went all over the place, but she covers a lot of those, and that stuff is super interesting to me. But then she like goes the opposite direction, where she's just like, "This is super scary, you guys," and like tells this weird story, and I'm like,
Well, it's like this whole thing. It's like, my brother said he didn't move the Ouija board. And
it's like, yes, you did.
I'm like, guess what? I've totally 100% moved things and forgotten about them. I've found video evidence of me doing things I don't remember doing. Like, sometimes you do a mundane task. Like, have you never had that thing where you like forget how you did a thing? Like in high school, I wouldn't remember. I'd walk between classes with no idea how I got from one end of the building to the other end of the building because it was daily routine. I
forget like driving.
Yeah, no.
Like, I'll have lost hours I've lost hours of my life driving from one place to another and forget that I did that.
Oh no, it's I get lost in thought and then suddenly like, oh, I'm here already.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's normal.
I scream at the ghost story or the ghost shows.
Yeah.
I'm very, very skeptical. I'm actually very skeptical of like older ghost stories, like the classic ghost stories that you hear all around America. Like, I can tell you right now, Let's see. The Winchester Mystery House. That's fake.
Well, I mean, it's real in the sense that it's a house.
It is in the sense of the house. But it is like the ghost angle that they put, like the actual Winchester Mystery House is beautiful. I've been there multiple times. They used to live in California, and it's a beautiful house. It is a testament to one woman's eccentricities.
Yeah.
But the whole ghost angle actually was a smear campaign that was happening while she was alive.
Okay. Like
in the newspapers, people were saying it's like, this is the reason. There's no real evidence, though. I mean, but it was such a good story that people just kind of ran with it.
I mean, didn't she? Okay, so you're gonna have to. So I was obsessed with this house when I was a kid, and I've never been there. But isn't there like a seance room and stuff where?
There's a room that they say is a seance room.
Okay.
There is a room that they call the seance room, and you can, and the whole thing behind that room is you can enter it one way, but you can leave it three ways.
Right,
because
that I knew,
there's doors on the inside.
Yeah.
However, there's no real, like, and now I could be wrong. It could be this whole, it's like people from the inside gave these accounts, but there's really no evidence that says that that's what was going on, or that she was afraid of the spirits that were following her.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't necessarily think that it was true that she was afraid of the spirits, but I thought that something was involved with them because, like, the constant building and the strangeness of some of those architectural decisions is, weird.
A lot of it, though, what we do have evidence for with that house is that she didn't know too much about architecture, but she knew enough to like give directions.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of a hobby to see, like, just to keep building.
Okay.
But there was no, like, the supernatural element didn't come into play until there was an article posted in the local paper in San Jose around the time, I don't remember how old she was, but it was around the time the house had gotten big enough to be, big. And the way that people are when they see rich people that just have buckets of money, there was a smear campaign that went on in the newspaper. And that's where the ghost angle first came out. And it's kind of fascinating to like think about it that way. It's like, yeah, that makes actually a lot of sense. Yeah. The other one is there is no historical evidence for, but is one of the biggest ghost stories, is actually Chloe from the Myrtles Plantation.
I don't think I'm off the top of my head familiar with that.
That one's pretty. Your viewers might know that one. The Myrtles Plantation is one of the most haunted places supposedly in America. Okay. There is absolutely no historical evidence for Chloe, who is the ghost of a slave woman that is said to have been in the story of, if you don't know, the Myrtles Plantation is there was a slave woman that was, quote, the mistress of the master. Yeah. And she had a bad habit of listening in on conversations. So to punish her, the master chopped off her ear. And she was worried that she was going to get sent out into the fields, and she didn't want to be sent out into the fields. So she decided to use oleander leaves to poison his two daughters and his wife, just enough so that she could nurse them back to health. And she didn't do it right and ended up killing all three of them. And then she ran away, told the other slaves what she did. The other slaves killed her because they didn't want to be in trouble. Supposedly the two daughters and Chloe still haunt the Myrtles Plantation. However, there is no historical evidence for Chloe. Around the time that they said this happened, there were no daughters in that location.
So I guess, like, the thing is that, like, with me and ghosts is that what I've often learned is that the stories associated with ghosts doesn't necessarily, just because the story is not true doesn't mean there isn't a ghost there.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Ironically, I'm calling back to something that listeners haven't heard yet. Because I grew up in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, one of the Milwaukee suburbs, and supposedly our high school theater was haunted. Mm-hmm. I know it is haunted because I saw the ghost. Like I know I talked about this on previous year's episodes, that at least one of them, that I was in a darkened room and I saw a blue ball of light form in the middle of the room, dart around the room, and then go into the wall. Like
right.
It was and then I went running out of that room at full speed. 17-year-old Trey was very terrified at that moment after seeing
that. I would also, what are you supposed to do? Hey, come back.
Right. But there was a legend in that theater about what that ghost was, of who that ghost was. He was this guy, Fritz Fitzsimmons, who was a student who supposedly died in that part of the building when it used to be the gym over there. And like, there's a whole story and legend. I went and looked up and researched that legend. There was no student by that name ever at that school. There was no incident of anyone ever dying in that building, let alone that part of the building. And like, the entire story was bullshit, right? Like the whole thing, the legend that had been passed down from student to student about the ghost in that building and had been passed down for generations before me. But the ghost was real.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and I think with a lot of like haunted locations, I'm a big proponent of like energy left behind,
100%,
rather than like a set story. I'm a huge history buff, and and when I hear things like that, it's like, okay, I'd want to give it I'd want to be I want to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
Because the story of, say, the Blood Countess is an interesting story. It's not true, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that castle is haunted, but
it's also, it's also, I don't know how much I've ever been certain that ghosts are the like spirit of dead humans who are remaining, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying no, like and I know that, like, I know people who have very personal stories and like who have felt connections to loved ones and things like that. So I don't want to like offhand dismiss that, but I'm also not convinced that even if some ghosts are the spirits of people, I am not under the impression that most or all are. And that like I believe, to go back to the belief in energy, is that I think that the energy put out by the living, like if you tell 20 people that there's a ghost somewhere and they all believe it really hard, and then they tell another generation of people that there's a ghost there and they all believe it, and then you keep doing that and repeating that, you will effectively create the haunting.
Yeah.
And it will happen. I don't know if it's because they create something or if they just draw something there, whether they're attracting a pre-existing thing or whether they, are creating a new spirit, but it's definitely like, it's not nothing.
Yeah. And that kind of ties into my own ghost story, where I've never actually like seen a ghost, or anything that has that kind of energy. But one kind of hung out in my apartment for a while. So like, obviously I practice witchcraft, and, I tend to notice that, like you already mentioned, people who practice witchcraft or are pagan or Wiccan, tend to also have seen something. And my theory behind that is that when you're working with energy, you will attract energy. And
especially if you don't ward properly.
Exactly. And that's kind of what happened to us. Not that we didn't work properly, but excuse me. What ended up happening is my wife and I, we've been in this apartment for 10 years, I want to say, maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
And we regularly, when we do things, it's, we do the whole, we do our rituals almost by the book, I want to say, if there is a by the book, since we're eclectic anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But, we're pretty conscious of like what we're sending out in a way, like what we like choose to work with and what we choose to do. And so it was like 5 years ago, around, I want to say August, we started noticing there was like a vibe in the apartment, in that very like we're not the only ones here. and it wasn't heavy. It wasn't like we weren't getting bad vibes, because I'm pretty sensitive to energy.
Yeah.
And we weren't getting any really bad vibes from it. It was just like there's something in the apartment with us. I don't know what it is. It's not dead. It's not malevolent. I don't think it's benevolent either. It's just kind of there. And I actually went through the apartment and broomed the place, as I call it, which is I take my ritual broom and I just kind of sweep out energy.
Okay.
But you know, pretty simplistic. Like I didn't think it was anything huge. It's just like I'm just gonna make sure this is, you know, sweep the place. And you know, that kind of like it stopped for a little while, but then it came back again. And I'm like, okay, so something is hanging out. And again, we were just like, we're just gonna chill and see what it does, because I don't want to throw anything out if it's just kind of hanging out. Because, you know,
see, that's you and me are different in that regard. Is that I'm just like, I would boot it immediately. there are times in my life where I can talk about it when you're done, but like it's I'm definitely relating to this experience so far.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was one of those things where we're like, I'm not sure what this thing is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's not doing anything. And it's not being disruptive. It's not even like, even though we could feel it, it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm constantly being watched. It was nothing ever like that. So we were just kind of like, all right, you can just chill and hang out, you know. And every now and then we would just feel this, like, you know, it's like, hey, I just walked in there and I just felt something in there. And it was around, I think it was into October when this happened. That was the first time we actually like felt something else, I want to say.
Okay.
Megsy, and this kind of happened right back to back. My wife, Megsy, was in the bathroom and she was taking a bath, and she just kind of like called me in at one point, and she's just like, hey, whatever's in our apartment was definitely in here.
Oh, that's
like,
fun.
Yeah, like watching you take a bath. And she's like, I don't think it was watching me. I think it was just in here. I'm like, okay, that's disconcerting, but you know, okay. So it was this like, all right, this thing is getting more active, and we were almost joking, but like half serious. It's like, well, it's getting towards Halloween. Of course it's getting more active, you know. And there was another time, the time that actually kind of worried me. There was two times that worried me, but this was the first time that got me actually like starting to research this thing.
Yeah.
Which was, we have a 2-bedroom apartment, and the one room we have is the office, and we have 2 animals that would just come in and destroy everything. So we kept the office door closed.
Okay.
Megsy went in one time to go get something, and she immediately closed the door as soon as she opened it, and then came back out and said, okay, so it's in the office and it doesn't want me in there. Okay. To which I said, what does that mean? And she explained that she went into the office to go get something, and she got a very strong get out. She didn't hear it. She didn't, like, there was no audio, there was no visual, nothing. It was just a feeling of get out. That got me a little concerned. She did say that she didn't really feel like threatened by it. It was just like you walked in on somebody changing or something. It was that sort of a vibe.
Like a cat hissing at you.
Kinda, like you walked in on somebody and surprised them, and they told you, oh my God, get out. But still, like, when you have something in your house that is dictating where you can and can't go, it's like, that was concerning. So I ended up trying to do some research and trying to figure out, okay, what the F is this thing?
Sounds like a ghost cat.
Well, I don't know. I to this day, I still don't know. We ended up starting to call it Kevin, which probably wasn't the best idea. I don't really recommend you name, if there is something in your house, I don't recommend you name it, because naming it gives it more energy. If you are if you have a vested interest in that sort of thing. But that's kind of along the lines of what we did, was we ended up naming it, and we called it Kevin because that's the same name as the bird from the movie Up. And and Kevin was a girl, so like this was before we had figured out that non-binary might be a thing, or like, agender or something like that. Like this was before I came out as trans. So
no, it's like, that's the non-binary experience of many of us, where that thing I've been feeling my whole life has a name. Shit.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were just like, okay, the thing in our house is Kevin. And that was the only time we ever had that experience where we walked in and and there was a presence of like, get out. So and I started looking up. I couldn't really get a specific of like what this thing was. Like some people were saying it might be some kind of elemental. It might be a ghost that's just wandering. Which
people
I don't
who
know
try to people who try to put like specific names on this stuff, a lot of the time, I'm just like, you're just flying by the seat of your pants here.
Yeah, you don't fucking know.
I've talked to witches of all experiences, and I've talked to I've dealt with ghost stuff my whole no, you don't know. We all have our theories, but the instant you say it with authority, you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So I couldn't find anything distinctive. I every time I tried to find something, it was, this is evil or not. And the concept of evil is weird to me in regards to things that might not really understand the concept of the Western good and evil. So I'm like, fuck it. Can I swear on this show? I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is rated an explicit podcast, so you're fine.
Okay, cool.
It's mostly, I do that to, I have it rated as explicit in case some 16-year-olds listening and their mom and dad get mad at me for teaching their kid about witchcraft, and so I can just say, well, you let them listen to an explicit podcast, not my fault.
Yeah, exactly. We were trying to figure out what the heck this thing was. I couldn't find anything distinctive, and I was just like, okay, if it decides to do anything else that on that level, then we're gonna figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But if it's just being chill like this and just every now and then getting scared because somebody walked in on it, I'm not gonna be that disturbed by it.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing it ever did, and this will become like a theme that happens every now and then to this day still. And for context, also, I will say, just for the skeptics' context, my wife and I are both have severe ADHD that is currently untreated. So that is
medical health system.
Yeah, exactly. My wife is also autistic, and she has her spatial awareness is not the best. So just putting that out there when I explain this story. So there was one time, this was after Halloween, but I think it was like in November or something like that. And we had like rent money or some type of bill money that we had to go take to the bank, and we set it down in a very specific spot. And it was on our dresser, and the bedroom didn't really have a whole lot in there. There was two side dressers or nightstands, excuse me. There were two nightstands, and then there was a bed, and the closet is a part of the building. So there's not a whole lot in that room. And and I saw her, she's like, hey, I'm putting it on my nightstand, blah, blah, blah. So when we go to the bank, that's where it is. Because again, both of us have ADHD, and we're like, where's the money? So when it's finally time to go get the money, I walk in and it's not in there. And I'm like, hey, where'd you put the money? And she's just like, it's in there. And I'm like, no, it's not. So she has to go back in, and she's like, no, I didn't move it. It was right there. So then we start looking around and keep in mind, this is a pretty huge chunk of money. This is like around $200 worth of money, which may not seem like a lot, but it was a lot to us.
That's a lot. That's a lot to, that's a lot to most of us.
If
you're listening to this show, that's probably a lot of money.
Yeah. So I was just
If you're listening to the show and that's not a lot of money, please consider contributing to the Patreon at patreon.com/TRAEGORN.
So we start looking around for the money, and we have cats. Obviously, the cats like to jump on things, so we're thinking the cat knocked it off. So we start looking around. We start moving things. We start moving the bed. We start looking underneath this space that, again, does not have a lot of stuff in it. And we're like, kind of let low key start freaking out because it's nowhere in the bedroom that we saw.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, what else could have happened? Okay, maybe the cats like grabbed it and ran away with it. That's really odd, but it could have happened. So we start searching everywhere. By this point, Megsy, we were searching for a good like 10 minutes before Megsy was just like absolute at the point of panic. And she's hyperventilating. She's on the she's like almost ready to have an absolute panic attack that we cannot find this money. And I'm like, it's okay, we're gonna find it. And I remember going into the living room, and it like kind of like I got this like weird little thing in the back of my mind of like somebody else is in the apartment, and it's the same feeling that I've gotten ever since this thing has been in our apartment. So I like it in my head. I said, Kevin, this isn't funny. Whatever you did with the money, I need you to put it back. Please. It's not funny anymore. And I don't know why I did that, because that's not something that I normally would do. Like, again, huge, massive skeptic of like, things don't disappear unless I misplace it.
Yeah.
So I like, while Megsy is trying to calm down, I go back into our bedroom. I literally see the money on the floor in a spot, not only that we had checked, but was like very visible. Like you could have walked in and seen it.
Wow.
It was like sitting right. It wasn't on the floor. Kevin did not bother to put it back on the nightstand,
no,
but definitely put it on the floor, like right next to the nightstand, very easily spotted. And I'm like, thank you, Kevin.
I am not.
I appreciate it. And then I told Megsy, it's like, I found it. And she's like, where was it? I'm like, apparently it was on the floor. And, I told her what happened, and she's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing it ever did, and has done something similar like that throughout the many years that it's been here. Again, it wasn't like I kind of like sat down and thought about it. I'm like, do I need to get this thing out of our apartment? It's like, well, it did respond to me saying it's not funny anymore and please put it back. So whatever this thing is, can either follow directions at least, or is playful or something like that, not malevolent.
Right.
So I rationalized we don't need to kick it out, and we'll just if it does anything that is destructive that can't be rectified, then we'll kick it out. We never did anything about it, and this energy kind of comes and goes.
Yeah,
it hasn't been here in a while, but I think that's because we have a roommate, and so it might be too busy. But
okay. It's funny because it reminds me of the very similar situation I had for years. I referred to it as the cat we didn't sign up for. As opposed to the cat we did sign up for. When I used to live actually just down the street from where I live now, there was a duplex I used to live in. And I talked about this in past years, so I won't go too deep into it. But I used to live with, I used to share a duplex with, it's a 2-bedroom duplex, half a duplex with Sean Corse of the Famicom Dojo podcast, also available on nerdandtie.com. But we used to have a house that we lived in, and there was a thing in the house So we used to live in this house, and there was referred to as the cat we didn't sign up for. Like, so what happened was the first time I noticed it was in the corner of my bedroom. I kept hearing this snoring.
Mm-hmm.
That I assumed it was just the walls were too thin, and I was hearing my roommate. Right? Like that's
right.
You hear snoring in the middle of the night in your room, you assume it's coming from the other room. That's shares a wall with yours.
Yeah.
The two closets are in the way, between you and where they're actually sleeping. But it's like that's the obvious assumption, and that's what I was assuming for a while until one night I woke up, and I was like, that's weird. I hear the snoring, and I get up and I armed, and Sean was not home. Sean was not in the apartment. And that's when I figured out that something else was happening. Like we had stuff happen there, like little annoying stuff. Like we had stuff that would move. We had separate linen closets, and we had like one thing where like one of my towels moved into Sean's linen closet, and neither one of us had done it. Like it had changed where it was. Stuff would get knocked over. And it just got to the point where I was just like, I would just start yelling at it to stop. Like, and it would stop doing things the moment I yelled at it. But like one time I was in the kitchen and I watched my hat, and this is like a wood, it's a driving cap. So it's like, but it's like, it was a rigid driving cap, not light, sitting on the kitchen counter. And I watched it slide off the counter onto the floor. Like when a cat just paws something off.
Yeah.
Except the cat was not in the room, and it took me a while to figure out why our cat just kept getting freaked out and running from the room all the time. And so I just got to yelling at it, and it was like living with a cat I didn't sign up for. Like more stuff happened than that, but I've talked about it enough on the show that like it was just such a frustrating experience. I did yell at it at one point to get the hell out of my room. I was like, I don't care where else in the house you go, you can't be in here. And that's when the snoring stopped in my room. Like it listened when you yelled at it. It would just do something to try to get your attention, and then you'd have to yell at it, and then it would stop. It was just like it really wanted someone to pay attention to it. And like this isn't like, that's the thing, it's like always like when you watch like movies and stuff like that, like, oh, the haunted house is like this old ancient building. That house was built in like the 60s or the 70s. Like, no one ever died there, at least when I lived. No one had ever died in that house when I lived there. I don't know what's happened since there, because I haven't lived there for like 17 years, and now it's been converted into a place where people with Alzheimer's live.
Okay.
That's just a weird thing to find out about a house you used to live in. I also live down the street from that house now, so like I literally drive by that house almost every day. So like it's just it's like a cat. It's like it wasn't malevolent, it wasn't benevolent, and it's just like we talked about it, like coming into the bathroom when Megzy was taking a bath. I'm like a cat would.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of felt like, I wouldn't say it felt like a cat. It definitely felt bigger, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it's like I wouldn't describe this thing as like, when I refer to things as ghost cats, I don't mean like a literal ghost of a cat. I mean like
just it acts like a cat.
Yeah, it acts like an irritating cat. Like not all cats are irritating, but some cats are, and this is what it was acting like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's kind of the experience. Our cats also will look at nothing for it's very funny actually.
Yeah.
We have a joke that it's the fairies.
Well, also cats just do that because they want to hunt and there's nothing to hunt.
Yeah, exactly. I had a recording on my old phone of our cat following something, which was really interesting, like on the wall. That was cool. I don't know if that was paranormal or anything.
Well, cats will shadow hunt if they don't have anything to hunt. Well, they'll effectively imagine something to hunt.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. It looked really cool, though. I could definitely put that on TikTok nowadays and go, cats following a ghost, and get like 1,000,000 likes.
Oh my God, don't even get me started. Like, you saw the thing, like, oh, it's a filter. I'm like, it's like tracking any kind of movement. Like, people who don't know about camera, videos, and effects, and they're going like, oh, it's a ghost. I'm like, no, it's artifacts. You dummies. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh yeah, of
we're
course.
going to slide on to the next segment now and introduce probably Bree NicGarran from here. All right, so joining me right now is Bree NicGarran, host of Hex Positive and the author of Grove Daughter Witchery, along with some other phenomenal books. So yeah, spooky.
Ghost stories, always good. It's like, ooh, my wheelhouse again.
Well, any excuse to get you on the show, also, because
oh, you're too kind. Thank you.
You're free content. No,
Well, I'm always happy to be here. It's always a good time talking to you.
Yeah. It's oof. So I don't know. So the fun thing about folks about how I produce this show is that I'm recording all of the segments for this before I do the joining segments in between. So I have no idea what order these are going into the episode. And I don't know if you've already heard some fun ghost stories or if we're starting here. But yeah, clearly we're talking about ghost stories because I've probably said that like 10 or 20 times now in this episode. But I haven't said it yet. But you've heard it already because linear time is an illusion and a construction created by those in power. No, that's not true.
Time's not real.
Well,
actually, if 2020 has proved anything, it is that time is not real.
You know, I was like going like, man, it feels like 2 years since a new season of Lock and Key came out. And then I looked it up and I was like, the first season came out in February. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, that's why there hasn't been a new season. They haven't filmed anything. It's been less than a year.
It's been 84 years.
Yeah, no, if there's anything that convinces me that I've always had this problem with time. Like, it's, you hear like stories about like with UFO encounters, like missing time and all this stuff. And I'm like, I would never notice. I am a person where if I don't have something like occurring in front of me to keep track of time, I have zero idea whether it's been a minute or an hour.
Same.
It's like literally while I work the day job, I have to have like music going, or I have to like, cause I work faster at my day job if Netflix is playing in the background than if nothing is playing, because what happens is that if I have nothing to like grab my brain, I just will sit at the screen for like a minute and not notice that a minute has passed. While if like something is playing in the background, my brain's like, oh, okay, time is passing, get to work.
Yes, I'm the same way. I actually listen to podcasts like all day, every day at work, both just to have the background noise and kind of the company, and like you said, to make myself aware that time is passing.
Yeah, but that's why like I hear stories of like time stood still. Like I'm just like, did it, or did you just start noticing time? Because like the best example for me, like, and how I am no longer any like good at this, is that I've had some stuff, some medical issues with my eyes lately. Everything's fine. I'm not going blind and I'm not going to die, so don't worry. But I had to go in through several appointments where I had my eyes dilated. And I don't know if you noticed, but when your eyes are dilated, you can't focus on any nearby object. And I'm so used to like just being able to, like when I'm bored somewhere sitting, like just pull out my phone, that I was sat down in a room just to wait for the doctor. Like, like at any medical visit, like you sit down somewhere, you have to wait a few minutes, right? And my natural habit in those situations in real life has become to pull out my phone, distract myself, look at things on the internet, whatever. And I could read the time on my phone when I glanced at it. And I just sat down. I was sat in the room and I was like, this feels like it's taking forever. I looked at the time and I made note of the time on my phone. And then I sat there and I was like, wow, this feels like it's been like 15 minutes. And then I looked at my phone. It had been 2. It had been 2 minutes.
Oh, geez.
Because my brain was perceiving time differently than normal. It's like the first time you drive somewhere, it feels like it takes longer than every other time you drive somewhere because your brain is logging every single moment. And so when people talk about like in paranormal experiences, like time slowing down or things like that is some sort of like important thing, I'm just like, no, 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 no. What's happening is your brain is logging every moment as important. Like that's the difference. It's you like, to go back to like my work thing, like time seems to fly. It's because I'm doing routine tasks. And so my brain is like, all of this is unimportant. I'm not going to pay attention to any of this. And so my brain feels like no time has passed when a long time has passed. Versus like when you're doing something novel or new, or if you're scared or in an emotionally heightened state, time feels like it slows down. And so every moment feels important. So your brain logs every single one of them as this is important. I'm paying attention. And so you have the constant perspective of all of those important moments having just happened before the current one. And so time feels slower. So that's not a paranormal thing, even though people always like, you hear all these like stories where like, whether it be like ghosts or whether it be, well, aliens also comes into this, like the time slowed down. So no, 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 you were freaked out. That's all that's telling you is that you were freaked out.
Yep, you're freaked out. The adrenaline was running and you're like, any little detail might be the difference between life and death right now. So I gotta pay attention.
Right.
And that does cause time, like you said, it causes time to feel like it's passing more slowly because you are logging so much more information.
Yeah. And
yeah. Our brains like to play tricks on us that way. That actually, not so much to do with time, but with noticing things. That's part of what's behind that phenomenon where if you look at yourself in a mirror in a dark room with a single light for a long time, it looks like your face gets distorted.
Yeah.
That's behind the whole like the whole Bloody Mary thing and basically any mirror game that you would play
most of them
at a sleepover.
Oh, a lot of it also has to do with night vision. Because you go into the darkened room without any night vision and you say it and then your eyes adjust to the dark and you see your own face.
I don't know. It's creepy.
Yeah.
Because they're not expecting it and you look weird with a flashlight under your chin or whatever.
I mean, it's true.
Plus people are expecting to be scared. So that's part of it.
Yeah. It's, it's interesting because like, I wonder how much you could actually summon with something like that if you truly believed in it hard enough.
Well,
I mean, like, that's a good question, right? Like, it's because it seems to me like if you believed hard enough and you were doing a ritual that was supposed to summon some sort of spirit, there are enough random things sometimes just floating by that would go, oh, yeah, sure, I'll show up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like that's just
freaking-lutely.
That's like, and there are enough things out there in the universe that are a bunch of dicks that would be like, oh, I'll fuck with you. Sure.
Oh, humans looking to be scared. Well, let me oblige.
You want me? I mean, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not saying that you really are at that high of a risk of summoning a ghost if you go do Bloody Mary in the mirror. But I am saying that it's not statistically non-zero.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I'm like, I'll say you got no chance of doing it in my mirror, but I also have, like, there's enough wards and walls that something would have to pass through that I'm pretty sure it wouldn't want to deal with it.
Same. I don't trust mirrors. I don't like them. And if there is an experiment out there that's going to be done to see if, summoning something through a mirror actually does work, it will not be me doing it. I have seen enough things in mirrors that it's like, hard pass.
I mean, my thought is I just don't want to deal with that stuff. Like, it's like, I mean, I don't want to voluntarily, I'm not going to voluntarily sign up to deal with a spook. I've involuntarily dealt with them enough in my actual human life that I do not want to voluntarily ask for more. Like, I've talked about it in the last couple of years in the podcast. I talked about it with you last year, and I'll probably mention it a couple of times in some of the other segments on the show. So I'm actually avoiding my own ghost stories in this conversation, because, I may need it as a segue later. But in my experience, most experiences I have had with ghosts are just out of raw, pure annoyance. Like, and if I could get rid of them, like, I want to get rid of mice when they happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's They are a frustrating infestation that I do not want to deal with when they're in my home. If they're out in the middle of a field, that's fine. I just won't go to that field.
Yeah, sounds about right.
You know? Like, oh, look, there's a bunch of mice over there and I'm outside. I'm just not going to go over there. I'm going to stay over here where they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel the same way about like ghost tours and ghost hunting and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it seems like a fun sort of once in a while sort of activity, but I also kind of liken it, and this is going to sound not quite nice, but it's also a bit like going to the zoo. You're going to see something that is either potentially harmful to you in some way, or at least something that would like really mess with your daily life if it was in your home. And it's in this place where it is meant to be, and it is separate from you. And there's a pretty good chance that it's not coming home with you. So it's like, oh, if you want to go and see like, you know, a bunch of parrots or some lions or, you know, whatever at the zoo, that's cool. They're awesome when they're there. It's neat to see them and it's fun. If you brought any of those home, it would be a disaster, or at the very least, really, really obnoxious.
Yeah, no.
So I'm like, no.
I mean,
parrots, stay over there.
Yeah, I have no problem with being a tourist when it comes to, ooh, that house is haunted. I want to check it out and look at it if it's safe to physically go in there, because not just like rotted floorboards someone will plunge through and die. But I've dealt with enough things that were not pleasant to at least like know how to keep them from following me, and keep them out of my house. But like, I don't want them in my home. Like I said, like it's cool to see. Yeah, like you said, it's cool to see the lion at the zoo, but you don't want it in your living room.
Exactly.
And it's
talk about the cat you didn't sign up for.
Exactly. The cat I didn't sign up for. That is, God, 3 years in that house. Oh, I drive by that house.
Great analogy, though.
I drive by that house almost every day, and I'm just like, because I live down the street from my old house, and it's like, I just go like, and again, it's my old house has been converted into a place where like people with Alzheimer's live.
Oh boy.
So again, I just like Alzheimer's and dementia people. They're in that house, in my old house, and I just go, like,
you poor bastards.
Well, do they notice?
Oh, yikes!
Like, I don't know. And I'm not saying that, like, I don't know, like, there are ghost stories I don't tell on this podcast, because there are people who were involved in those stories who wouldn't necessarily want it public knowledge that they were involved. It's more so, it's not that like I have a problem sharing them for my participation, but some of the other people in those stories might not want to be publicly known that they were, say, doing something witchcraft related 20 years ago.
Fair.
But there are things about that house I can't. There are things that I dealt with while living in that house that maybe artifacts from those experiences are embedded in that house as a manner of disposal, and that although not the one thing that someone would be worried about knowing its location, that's elsewhere. There are, it's just there's stuff, and I hope they don't tear the walls down at any point. Anyways, so let's not talk about that house, only because I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up talking about that house at some other point in this episode. So let's talk about we talked last year. We talked about a bunch of your ghost stories, including probably the spookiest fucking one I've ever heard. If you haven't listened to last year's the Halloween episode on this podcast, where I talked to Bree for a long period of time, go listen to that, because you have probably one of the scariest stories I've ever heard a personal acquaintance tell me. In that episode, that
yes,
Makes me want to avoid the entire town you grew up in.
That was actually one of the first times that I've ever like told that story to another person, and like the telling of it was really quite cathartic, and I've been able to retell it a few times like since then, and it's not as bad now.
Okay.
Like it doesn't mess with me as much, and you know, just thinking about it now, it's not as bad. And actually, I meant to thank you for the whole discussion that we had about sleep paralysis, because even though your take on it was, hey, yeah, this was like 99.9% probably not sleep paralysis because you were able to move.
Yeah.
And that puts a slightly uncomfortable spin on the whole experience. It's really nice to have that confirmation.
Well,
and to feel like, oh no, I'm not completely crazy.
For the listeners who have not listened to it, I am a person who does experience sleep paralysis, which is again where I get on the whole BS on most alien abduction stories, because I experience sleep paralysis occasionally. I haven't had it for a while, which is thankful, but last year I was going through a whole bunch of bouts of it, and it was super not fun. I say for a while, maybe I had it 6 months ago. I don't know. 6 months ago feels like 10 years ago right now.
Yeah.
I haven't had it within the last month. That I know.
Knock on wood.
Well, I mean, that's just I'm not going to undo previous time. It will happen to me again in the future. Of that, I am certain. It's, you know, it will happen to me many times again in the future because it's just the way my body. It's my brain and my body. It's no longer a scary thing for me.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, it's you wake up and you have a hallucination of a ghost from a TV show. You go, oh, great, my brain's not even creative.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, so
I mean, at the time, I'm sure it was scary, but that's still just so funny.
No, it was. It started out as like your brain's in a state of fear when you wake up like that, and then it's like, oh my,
this is from a TV show.
No, and then like immediately the thought of that's the bent neck lady. That's not real. That's from a show. I'm done. I've hallucinated the bent neck lady. That's not scary to me because I remember watching that. And so like the moment of like I'm not a person who's like mentally slow to wake most of the time. So like and also you're in a state of fear, so you're really alert. And so like when it happens. So yeah, it's like I'm immediately not afraid anymore.
Just annoyed.
Yeah. Well, also I'm like, I got so many wards on this house. There's no way a ghost would just be sitting in my bedroom. There are more wards on my bedroom than in the entire place I live in.
There you go.
Because you layer your wards. Okay, folks, this is what you do. You're warding for spirits. Think about where you're most vulnerable when you're asleep. So you ward your whole home, then you ward your bedroom, then you ward your bed. Make your bed the safest place in your home if that's where you're going to sleep regularly. Easy peasy. That way, anything to get to you would have to get through 3 layers to get to you when you're unconscious. Just
exactly.
Ward your home, ward your bedroom, ward your bed.
Mm-hmm. Wards on wards on wards. You can never have too many.
But people tuned into this for the juicy ghost stories, not the practical advice. So...
Oh, I've still got plenty more for you. So last time we talked about, we talked about the house in Pennsylvania where I spent a portion of my teenage years. And I'm pretty sure that I told the story about Penny chasing a ghost out of the apartment.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So this time I've got some that are slightly less harrowing. I've got some from, a vacation I took with my husband back when he was my boyfriend. I've got a couple of family ghost stories, and I've got 2 extremely recent ones that I've had at my workplace because I work in a historical area, and of course. So what would you like to hear first?
Oh my God, I'd like to hear all of them, is whatever order you're willing to dish them out to me, because this is great.
Okay. Well, let's see. I guess we can just go in that order. I'll start with the Charleston ghost tour. Now, my husband and I, my online followers will know him as Ragnar. We've been together for about 7 years now. Back in the first year and a half that we were dating, we went on a little extended weekend trip down to Charleston, South Carolina. Very romantic. It's a beautiful city. If you ever get the chance to go, once things have calmed down and are a little bit safer, I definitely recommend it. It's a super fun place to visit. Great vibes, so much to see. And because he already knew me very well, we went on one of their evening ghost tours. Just a walking tour around a few blocks of the city. Heard some stories, heard some stuff that my history buff brain went, that's not, no.
What, you
stop.
mean people running a ghost tour embellish for spookiness?
I'm like,
get the
oh
tourist
boy.
dollars?
It was like, okay, so that part of the Blackbeard story, yes, I know that part is historically accurate, but the next 2 paragraphs that you said, just no.
I mean, might it be stuff that Blackbeard's lied and spread about himself?
Oh, I'm certain.
Yeah, no,
I'm certain.
I'm sure
or
that
it's
there's
stuff that was like attributed to him, but it was actually his minions. It was really entertaining.
I mean,
though.
Blackbeard was a dramatic
great story.
motherfucker. It's
oh my God, yes.
Put the candles in his beard and all that shit.
Burning punk in his hat, drama.
Yeah.
But yes, so we get to the old Charleston courthouse. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the building, and someone is probably screaming at me right now.
I don't know
with the actual name of it. But there is a jail under the building. It's a bunch of like vaulted stone cells. If you've ever seen pictures of like Mary King's Close, where it's just a bunch of like stone tunnels and like archways that you walk through, it was a bit like that, just very enclosed.
Okay.
Pretty standard architecture for the time. So we go down there and they're telling us all these stories of people who've been there. We took some pictures. It was a good time. And this is how long ago this was. I was using an actual camera.
Ooh.
Like an actual, well, it was a digital camera, but still, it was like an actual camera with flash where you had to press a button to make it work. There was a shutter and everything.
Wow, I haven't used a camera like that since like 2007.
I know, right? I've always been a little behind the times with technology, so yeah.
Actually, I probably used one up until like 2010 or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, this was 2013, so you've got me beat.
Yeah. Well, that's when I got my first smartphone.
There you go. So we had a good time, and we're all just kind of exploring the basement. They have some little tableaus set up to show like what it was like, and this is very, very neat. And they said, if you catch anything on your pictures, take 2 or 3 pictures with flash a few seconds apart, and that's how you catch things. And I'm like, okay, fine. I was already at a point in my life where it's like orbs, right?
Yeah, that
orbs.
Sounds like you're illuminating dust.
Exactly. So, but I actually kind of caught something, which shocked me. I've been very used to looking at orb photos and going, that is a light reflection, that is dust, and that is Photoshop.
Oh, don't forget the bugs.
Oh, and the bugs. Yes, the rods.
Yeah.
The bugs. Mm-hmm. So I took 2 or 3 photos that were, just a couple seconds apart, just basically as quick as I could push the button. And one of them looked like it had some little particles in it floating near the floor. Then I took one a few seconds later, and these things had moved just a few feet. And then in the third one, they were gone. And it was like, oh, that's odd and interesting. And I figured, and it probably was dust, but it didn't look like dust, and it didn't quite behave like dust. And there was no one over there that was like stirring anything up. There wasn't a lot of air movement, so it's like,
yeah, because my first
sure.
instinct would have been an air current moved it, like, and
yeah,
like it was general
strange.
settling for like the first 2 photos, and then a sudden air current grounded things or moved them out of the way.
Yeah, but it was very odd to me that it's like, okay, I've been taking other pictures of other areas that I've been near, and I know I've been kicking up dust because I was moving, and nothing in any of those. But now I'm standing still, everyone else is on the other side of the room, and there's something that looks like particle movement. It's like, oh, that's odd. And I would not have thought a darn thing of it except for what happened next.
Okay.
I take these pictures and I'm kind of turning around. Sorry. So I took these pictures and I'm kind of turning around and showing them to, the tour guide and to Ragnar and going, hey, this is really odd. Is this like what you guys have been talking about? She's like, yeah, that's what people generally get down here. I'm like, okay, so it still might be dust, but it might not. And on the other side of me, basically in a straight line from where the particles had been, the rest of the group suddenly starts going, oh my God, there's a cold spot here. And again, enclosed area, not a lot of air movement, not a lot of temperature fluctuations, no ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, okay, that's really weird. And they had all been standing kind of in the same place, and then suddenly it was cold. And it was like,
okay, well,
it shouldn't, it still seemed very arbitrary to me.
Yeah,
it was like,
I will say, like, so if we want to talk about how there's a cold spot, regardless of the cause of that cold spot, if a sudden area of the room suddenly got cold, that would cause an air current.
That's
because
true.
of the air pressure change. So it means that what you want to look for then is the cause of the cold spot, whether or not that's paranormal, because in all likelihood the first the 3 photographs were dust, but that doesn't mean dust wasn't affected by something paranormal.
True.
So I don't want to I'm the person that I am is always going to be like, let's dissect and find any possible real cause of this ghost experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because this may just be, scientifically valid. This may just be like a regular casual phenomenon, I should say, and not a ghost. Because I came up from I'm like, let's debunk everything, and that way we can look at the stuff we can't debunk. And so I'm kind of strongly on the dust front for the photos, but you would then need to find the cause of the cold spot.
Exactly, which is what I set about doing. I was kind of looking all over, like, okay, is there a vent? Is there like a window? Was there a door somewhere else in this space that was opened? And, it was chilly outside. So it was like, did someone open a door and let in a draft? No, it doesn't seem like it. Okay, well, maybe they're just cold. Maybe they just realized that, it's October and it's chilly. Whatever. And then someone on the outside of the group went, hey, it's not there anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that was a thing. And about a second, maybe 2 seconds later, I felt this not like a cold wind, but just like a block of something cold go right past me. It was like I had suddenly just kind of whiffed by an open walk-in freezer. And it was like, I think it went that way.
Yeah.
It was very odd and kind of unsettling. And then I looked over in the direction it had gone, and there was this big sort of divider chain that was up near the front of the room, many, many feet from anybody else, not near an open door, and very, very heavy, and it was swinging wildly from side to side. This was like a 15-pound anchor chain type thing. And I'm like, okay, right up until I saw that, I thought maybe this could all just be something odd or, you know, whatever. But seeing the chain swinging was just like, oh, okay, maybe there is something going on.
Yeah. So, do you want my honest feedback?
Absolutely. Because I still think this is like, but go for it.
Okay, so my honest thought is that I give you a maybe. It's
that's kind of where I'm at.
Without knowing the details of the structure and like, you know, without the specific details and never having been there, it's impossible for me because like in theory, if there was some mechanism that a draft could occur that you just didn't observe, that could explain the moving cold spot and that could explain the moving chain. And it definitely, and the existence of the cold spot already explains the movement of the dust. Now, you know, because like it implies, because just if air gets suddenly cold in part of a room, that air is more compressed than the air around it, which then causes wind, right? So like any sort of massive temperature change, regardless of its cause, is going to cause air shift, which would have caused the dust to move like that on the ground in the photo. So the photos are indicative of an air pressure change, be it from a draft or a cold spot or anything. Now the cause of the cold spot, that's the question. It's that is the thing that, so I give you my great summation of I believe what you experienced is valid in the sense that all this shit happened in front of you. I cannot 100% say that was caused by paranormal phenomenon, but I also can't say that it wasn't. So maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's anything that's there, it's more than likely just residual. So it would just been, like a recording of something that already happened. Right. And I'm always...
because linear time is a construct. We've already established that.
Exactly. I'm always just a little more skeptical of anything that happens on a ghost tour. Yeah. Because I want to believe the best of any tour company and any tour guide or location that, if you're having an experience there, that they want it to happen organically. But I also know that some places will, they'll mess with people because that keeps bringing in the tourist dollars.
Well, and also they're going to select locations where, like, if there is a reason why that building has like drafts with like unconventional sources, that would end up on the tour because it would give people experiences like this consistently.
Oh, absolutely.
And way more consistently than a real ghost would. Like, I just want to ghosts are never consistent. Like, it's real ghosts because are in theory, whether they're acting out a recording of past actions or of an independent intelligence, aren't going to be like perfect replicable things every single time. And so actually a ghost tour is more motivated probably to find something with natural causes than supernatural causes because it will bring consistent experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Just like they're trying to tell people to take effectively orb photos, which are just illuminated bugs, dust, and other things, and other aerial plankton. That's aerial plankton is what we call, say, like the spiders ballooning in the air. They're all over the place.
Just I like over aerial plankton. That's a good term.
That's a scientific term. That's a real term.
Ooh,
that's
nice.
That's like you look up enough about spider ballooning. Spiders can like travel for miles on the wind, 30 feet up in the air. So at any moment there might be a spider directly over your head when you're outside.
Blech.
Doesn't matter how much in the open you are or anything. Like that's how like spiders. It's like the phenomenon was first discovered like hundreds of years ago when this ship that was like 2 miles off the coast ended up with all these spiders.
Oh, jeez.
Because there'd been a hatching on shore and all the baby spiders ballooned and landed on this boat.
Ooh, that's some nightmare fuel.
Yeah, no, I mean like they were just regular spiders. Like they were
but they were spiders.
But it was just unexpected spiders. Like, right, you haven't hit land in months and suddenly you have a bunch of spiders on your mast.
No.
Even if, like, we're not talking about, like, big, scary spiders. We're talking about the little tiny house spiders that you're used to in a normal life, but, like, just suddenly there are a bunch on your ship out of nowhere.
Don't care. Unexpected spiders.
The bigger the spider, the harder it is for them to balloon. So the smaller spiders are the ones more likely to fly through the air and land somewhere. That's why what makes it less scary. Like the big scary spiders are the ones who can't do that because they have too much body weight.
No, less scary. Speak for yourself. Yeah,
I mean,
thank you.
I don't know. When I lived in Indiana, I had a problem with wolf spiders getting into my house, into my apartment, because I lived right outside this park. And let me tell you, at 3 a.m, when you're in your pajamas and have no shoes on, and a wolf spider is charging right at you in your bedroom.
Oh, yeah. Nope.
Like,
nope.
Those are complete. You can have spooky experiences with no ghosts involved. Just fight a wolf spider at 3 a.m. They're not deadly. Like, a wolf spider's not going to kill an adult human being. Like, if it was like anyone like over the age of 3 has nothing to worry about from a wolf spider other than maybe like a painful bite. But they're big. Wolf spiders are big. Go ahead and Google it.
And they are bold.
They are. And they will, oof. And like one day you're waking up and you're walking down the hallway and you just see a wolf spider sitting on the baseboard, and you're like, God damn it! Like, these things are bigger than the mice I had to deal with in my apartment last year. Like, wolf spiders are.
I remember walking into the laundry room of our apartment building, like the first year I lived in Virginia, and like I said, I'm a Pennsylvania girl. I'm used to my share of creepy crawlies and stuff. No one told me about the spiders in Virginia. So I walk in and there's a wolf spider at the opposite end of the room.
Yeah.
I swear to God, the thing was the size of my palm, just like scuttling across the baseboard. And I dropped the basket and ran back to the apartment.
Yeah.
I was like, boyfriend, you're going to go do the laundry now. There is a bug.
Yeah, imagine a spider that big in your bedroom in the middle at 3 a.m.
Ooh, hard no.
And you have to kill it without waking up your wife, because she's asleep, and you definitely know she won't get back to sleep if she knows that this. I grabbed my shoes were in the other room too, so I couldn't like grab a shoe and hit it. I grabbed we had a plastic tumbler, like a plastic cup, like not a disposable one of those like reusable plastic cups. It was on the shelf. It just happened to be sitting on the dresser in the bedroom. I think like we were using it to water a plant or something like that. And I grabbed it. It was empty, thankfully. I grabbed it and I slammed it on the ground so hard to try to kill it, and I missed.
Oh, no.
And so it got more mad and started coming right at me. And so I hit it the second time, and I slammed the cup on the ground so hard that I broke the cup.
Oh, jeez.
Oops. But I killed it, and then I had to dispose of it because they're huge. It's like sometimes you kill like a little spider and you're like, I'll just leave it on the wall. It's fine. I'll clean it up later. No, you can't do that with a wolf spider body. They're big. And so I had to
splat.
So I had to clean that out of the carpet before I went to sleep. All without waking up my wife.
But did you manage it?
Did
she wake up?
No, she did not wake up. I was very successful in that regard.
Good job.
We had a fan going, so little noises like that weren't too bad. But and the wolf spiders are the worst. So it's like when I moved back to Wisconsin a few years ago, it was so nice. My wife and I, we have a language about like when we talk about the size of a spider. Like, there's a spider here. I was like, how big is it? She said, my wife might say, oh, it's big, and I said, my response then is, Wisconsin big or Indiana big? And she goes, Wisconsin big. I'm like, oh, okay, that's not a big deal. Because, I mean, technically there are wolf spiders out here, but, like, I've never had them come into a home up here, and there's just way more of them down there. And so, like, it's only funny because, like, the actual, like, deadly spiders are the same spiders in Wisconsin and Indiana. Like, you might get a black widow or a brown recluse. Like, right. And I've only ever encountered brown recluses in Indiana. We had a couple in my old apartment. But, like, brown recluses are, like, scary but not super stressful because they are docile motherfuckers. Like, you gotta make them bite you. But
I've
still
picked
gonna
one
kill
up
it
with a
when I
piece of
see
paper
one.
and like shoved it out of a room once.
Oh no, they're gonna die if they're in my home. I'm just gonna do it with something that's not my skin.
Yeah.
Because
I was feeling charitable that day. I'm like, oh, outside you go.
I've thankfully not had to deal with the Black Widow. I've had friends who've had to deal with Black Widows. I've never had to deal with the Black Widow.
Those freak me out.
Spooky as hell. Like, I think the spiders are the scariest thing we're going to talk about on the show.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, well, bringing it back around to ghost stories. I do have some heartwarming ones if you'd like to hear them.
Oh, absolutely.
Better than spiders. So much better. So both of these take place up in Pennsylvania, where there are fewer spiders, ostensibly, than there are here in Virginia, where I live now.
I was going to say, it's...
or at least they're quieter.
It's the further south you go, the bigger the arthropods get.
Mm-hmm. Doggone it. So, let's see. Chronological order. Both of these deal with grandparents who have passed away. So if anyone is sensitive to that, just there's your warning. So my second year of college, I went away to school. I went to Kutztown University for a year. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. Didn't quite work out. I discovered I just had no patience for like the politics and the curriculum and the whole idea of like dealing with the parents of students. It was like, no. And yet I have somehow come back around to teaching people. I can't get away from it. But anyway, so while I was there, there was a bit of a snafu with my rooming situation, and I ended up staying in the attic of one of the older buildings on campus for about 2 weeks right before the holiday break. And I don't know if anyone listening to this has ever been to the Pennsylvania mountain country in the fall and in the winter. It gets cold.
I've driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike, but only in like September.
Yeah. It gets pretty cold, starting in November. In October there, yeah, it gets chilly at night. It can go down to freezing. In November, just the bottom drops out and it gets really freaking cold. And when you're in cow country, or when you're in one of the towns that are up in the mountains, it's very, very windy. And the wind chill just makes everything so much worse. So while I was in the attic of this building, while I was living there, I had to contend with the other hazard of living in the mountains in Pennsylvania, snow. Now, I know that there's a lot of northern states that are like, you only got 2 feet of snow. That's nothing. But when it drops on the town in the space of maybe a day and a half, and you're away from home and you don't have access to transportation that can get you out of there, and you don't have supplies because you're a broke college student.
Yeah.
And, you don't have like adequate bedding or clothing because of, just other situations I was in at the time. It can be less than fun.
I'm going to tell you, I'm a person who has spent a large portion of my life living in northwestern Wisconsin. 2 feet of snow within the course of 2 days is a big deal for people here. It's
fair enough.
So here's the secret, guys. So really what happens is that when we go on Facebook and see people who live in southern states complaining about 2 inches of snow, we laugh at you and then exaggerate about how much we're comfortable with, because we do find 2 inches laughable. We don't find when a foot of snow drops overnight, we're like, oh God, what a fucking pain in the ass. Like, it's none of us go like, oh, this is no big deal. We all go, not this shit again. Like that's the grand secret is, do we go outside without coats in 50-degree weather and think you're weird when you don't act like that? Like, we think it's weird when people put on a coat and it's like 55 out and we're like, what? It's fine. What are you talking about? But 2 feet of snow is a big deal. We don't fucking like it. We don't like, no, it's,
yeah, I mean, even like you said, even a foot of snow is a big deal if you don't have a way of getting around.
I lived for 3 years without a car in Eau Claire. I live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. There was a chunk of time I lived for more than 3 years without a car. But when I was And for a good chunk of that, I was living on campus and didn't have to drive anywhere, so everything was within walking distance then. So like 2 feet of snow don't matter if you can make it to the next academic building in 20 feet. But I spent 3 years living in the 3 years I spent living in that house without a car, relying on public transportation. And you get like 2 feet of snow and you got to wait for the bus, and the bus is running 15 minutes behind, and you got to get to work. And yeah, it is, you are going nowhere, and people don't frickin' shovel their sidewalks when they're supposed to. Assuming there's a sidewalk. And
that's true.
I get mad. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
So you were snowed in the mountains.
I was snowed in. And I had like a little store of Easy Mac and like a bag of Tostitos to my name. It was not going to be a fun weekend.
Oof.
The campus was closed. All of the classes were canceled. And unfortunately, that also meant that like the student centers were closed, which is like where you go when you're on campus if you need emergency food, because some places will have a vending machine down in the common room and most places will not. So it's like you're reliant on those cafeterias.
So I was lucky enough at my college that the front desks of all the dorms also sold like frozen pizzas and like muffins.
Great.
And so like on the weekends, like if you wanted to eat something at 3 a.m, it was but also like the few times where like winter shut down the main buildings and therefore the cafeterias, there was still like food accessible to me as a human.
Yeah, I mean there were a couple of like little cafe style restaurants kind of down the hill in the town portion. There was a gas station at the bottom of the hill that sold food. It was one of the Turkey Hill ones, so it actually had like decent stuff.
Yeah.
The trouble was getting there and also being broke.
Yeah. No.
So it's like, welp, it's me and my Easy Mac for the next 2 days, just until things get like cleared out. So the first night that I was in there, I'm like, all right, this is an old building and it's drafty and it's cold and, you know, just things hadn't been going well. I was just kind of sitting there feeling sorry for myself. And I'm like, all right, I'm done with today. I don't want to think about this anymore. I'm just going to roll up in my blanket and try and get some sleep. So I just, I rolled up in the blanket I had with me, kind of curled up and was like, I just hope that it doesn't get any colder. Or maybe that they'll turn the heat back on or something. I don't know what it was that was going on in that room. Maybe it was bad window seals, but it was cold to the point where it wasn't dangerous, but it was obnoxious. So I laid down, and I usually sleep on my left side with like an arm outstretched. So I fall asleep. And I woke up in the wee small hours of the morning, no clue what time it was. I didn't have a clock in front of me, because it felt like somebody had touched my hand. Not in like a startling way. It literally just felt like there was a hand and it just kind of laid over the back of my hand for a second and squeezed a little and then it was gone.
Interesting.
It was very sort of comforting. Just like a nice little checking up on you sort of touch. It was very nice. And I woke up thinking, "Oh, someone squeezed my hand. Someone squeezed my hand." Suddenly wide frickin' awake. I'm like, the door is locked. I am on the 3rd floor of this building. There is no one else on this floor. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And, in the few seconds that it took me to stop having a small heart attack, I noticed, 1, the room was definitely empty and the door was still closed. And 2, it was warm. It was like not uncomfortably warm, but just like, oh, this is like bearable now. And it's the small hours of the morning. It should be even colder than it was when I went to bed, if that was possible. But no, it was like, oh, this is doable. I can manage this with a blanket and some slippers and a sweater. This is okay. And there was a scent in the room. And I knew that it was something that I hadn't, just overlooked before. And I knew that it wasn't something that had drifted in from another room. It was perfume. And more than that, and this is where I get choked up, it was something that I knew. My mom, my grandmother on my mother's side, who I was very close with, she passed away when I was about 15 years old. It was very unexpected. She'd been sick off and on for most of her adult life, but she'd been doing okay. And then just one morning, she was gone, just out of nowhere. And she was one of the things that inspired me to go and, have this college experience, because she was a librarian. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a teacher, eventually become a librarian, and be like, yeah, because Mom did that and it was awesome. And that's what I want to do. And she wore a very distinctive perfume called White Shoulders. And it's not something that's very common. You don't see it very much anymore. I don't actually know if they still make it. They might.
I don't know. I think it's a perfume that I have heard of, and that means it's very distinctive. Piece of media mentioned it in some show or something.
Yeah, but, it's real distinctive, and it's definitely like an older ladies kind of perfume.
Yeah, that's the association I have.
Yeah, and when I woke up that night, that's the smell that was in the room. There was nothing else that could have produced it. I certainly didn't have any with me, and I didn't think that anyone in the building would be using it, let alone at the wee small hours of the night. And it was like, oh, hi, Mom.
Wow.
Yeah. That's one that gets me, because it's like, feeling like they're looking out for you is always nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also nice just to have ghost experiences in my life that aren't terrifying.
Yeah. No, non-terrifying experiences are generally preferred over terrifying experiences, just the general rule.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So fortunately, like the next day, they had the plows through, and things were able to like open up a little bit again. And within a day or two, I was like, okay, things are back to normal. But it stuck with me that it's like, that was probably up until that point in my real adult life, that was like the hardest that things had been for me. And it's like, she's still looking out for me.
Yeah.
And that was just really cool. So in the vein of family ghost stories, a few years after I got out of college and was, much more into my adult life, probably in my mid to late 20s, my grandfather on my dad's side, my grandpa, he developed Alzheimer's. And as we all know, it's a really, really devastating disease, and it steals people. Part of them just goes, and it can be very quick, and it's really kind of harrowing to see. It's really scary.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. Over the course of like a year or so, he went from being this very, very jovial, very self-sufficient man to being, in a hospital bed and not laughing at the jokes that he always used to laugh at. And that was the heartbreaking part. So I was living away from home at the time. I had, struck out and kind of gotten my first place. And I was called home because they were like, yeah, it's time. So I went to the hospital. I did my goodbyes, but it was like, I can't just sit around and watch, So I went back to my mom's house and was just kind of hanging out there. It was me and my old cat Rusty. And it was like, all right, I'll light a candle for Granddad and hunker down, maybe try and get some sleep. So about an hour after I got back, the cat next to me sits up and fixes on the end of the bed. And I'm like, hey, bud, what you see? Because I'm like, I'm used to this sort of thing by now. So it's like, okay, I know when something's going on. And I look down at the end of the bed to the dresser that's there, and I see the candle start to flicker, and then it goes out. And I'm like, oh, bye, Granddad. And about 20 minutes later, my dad called me and said, yeah, right around the time that happened was when he passed.
Since we've been talking for like over an hour, we should probably get to, you said you had a more recent ghost story happen, or a more recent ghost experience.
Yes. There are two that I have had at my workplace. Now, I won't triangulate myself too much. Most people do know that I live outside of Williamsburg in Virginia. So like we're pretty close to the historic area, and I do work in a historic area, but it's not that historic area.
So it's not the historic area I've been to.
Correct. Correct. But I work in a building that used to be something else, like so many places here. I'm pretty sure ours was a school at some point. I think that's right. So, you get a lot of history there, a lot of people passing through. And so one day, I've been working at this place for a few years now. And one day I was staying late, and I'd only been there about 6 months. Everyone else left, said goodnight to my supervisor. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to get, these last few projects done. I'll put in an extra half hour, make myself look good as the temp. And, hopefully they'll keep me. And they did. But about 5 minutes into what I was doing, I heard someone walk by my cubicle. And I was like, oh, that's strange. I could have sworn everyone had left. And I was pretty sure that it was a woman because it sounded like a skirt swishing. And I knew there were people in the office who wore skirts. And it's not uncommon also for people to be in and around these things in historical garb. If they've come from one of the other areas, they're not going to change between having to, go and do this over here and then drive half an hour down the road to take care of something else.
Look,
so
I got to churn butter at 2, and then I got to get that report filed by 4.
Exactly. I've got to get this paperwork done, and then I've got to go, milk a cow. It's the same thing. So I was like, oh, darn, did someone just walk by? I feel, dumb for not saying hello. So, I immediately pipe up with, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone was still here. I look out of my cubicle. I have a straight shot up and down the hallway, doors at either end. Nothing.
Oh, jeez.
Neither door had opened or closed. If there was someone there, I was quick enough getting up that I should have seen them. Like, there was no time for them to duck into one of the other offices. If there was someone physically there, I should have seen them. So I just kind of went, okay, place is all yours. And I packed up my stuff and I left. So it's just like, okay, all right, mess with the new girl. I see how it is. Good night. So Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't really scary. It was just kind of like, oh, with this shit again. Not having it. No. And I came to find out, when I mentioned it to my managers the next morning, they're like, oh, yeah, that stuff happens in here all the time.
Yeah, no, it's the more time you spend around ghosts, the more casual it becomes. It's, I've been taking nightly walks during this year during the pandemic through a park in just through my neighborhood and through a park that's nearby. Part of it's in the woods, part of it's this kind of like little project to maintain this small piece of prairie, whatever. And so I walk through there like every night, and my biggest concern most of the time is deer, because they will run out 2 feet in front of you, just out of like. I have not punched a deer yet, but don't think I won't.
Rats with hooves.
But like I've had this experience where there's this point in the walk where I've been feeling like there's something kind of there, and then a few times like I've felt a tug on my shirt, and at this point I'm just like I've just started saying no, fuck off, leave me alone. I'm just like, no, don't come with me, stay there. I got other shit to deal with. If you try to follow me, I'm going to be pissed off, and you don't want to deal with it. So it's literally like, it's been like 2 or 3 times. Like, oh, and by the way, like I had the fun experience of listening to this month's the first part of the Hex Positive October episode while doing that walk the other night, and
my God.
On the full moon. It was October 1st. It's the full moon, and I'm listening to that episode. And I get the tug on my shirt, and I'm just like, no, don't play with me right now. I am not here for this. I am not, no, fuck off. I'm listening to the thing about Ouija boards. I don't need a real ghost showing up. As I just walk, it's like right after the like half a block of like actual pure woods that I walk through, like on the full moon. Like, I'm just like, this is... You're just being a fucking cliche right now.
Like you said, ghosts are dicks.
I know.
So that's hysterical. I love it.
Yeah. So that was like it's this year, like these little encounters in that part of the park have been my only like ghost experiences in years, because I've been steadfastly avoiding them and warding like crazy.
Same.
And,
yeah. So it's real weird to be like experiencing this stuff at work when I have so actively avoided this for so long, and like, keeping that eye like firmly freaking closed. And then, like literally last week, I go upstairs to use the ladies' room because it's the closest one to my office. And they just installed all of the automatic flushes for everything while we were all away on quarantine break.
Okay, yeah.
So it used to be handles, now it's automatic. So I'm in there and I'm finishing up, and down at the opposite end of the stalls, one of the toilets flushes. Okay. Now, I knew for a damn fact when I walked in that I was the only one there, because I could see that all the doors were open, and I happened to know that, because a lot of people were working from home right now, there's not a lot of people in the building.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, somebody wants a little privacy. I'm just gonna go wash the hands real quick, double check. Yep, no one else here. Gonna go.
And so you want some sadly debunking news like response?
Oh, I know that like automatic flushes are weird, and like water pressure can make it go.
Well, no, but also some of them are programmed to do it periodically if they haven't flushed in a while.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
interesting.
Yeah, it's I used to live in I lived on the university for like 3 or 4 years, and they had automatic flushes in a bunch of the bathrooms, and some of them, because like sometimes the sensors will malfunction or not pick up that they should flush, and can leave stuff in the toilet for a long period of time. Some automatic flushes are programmed to periodically just reflush themselves.
Oh.
Because like I'd be sitting in the bathroom, because I'd be sitting in the bathroom, and then suddenly all the urinals would flush at the same time or the neighboring toilet would flush, and these were not haunted places. Well, no, they might have been haunted, but this wasn't a haunting thing. it's I mean, those buildings aren't new. A friend of mine died in one of those buildings. I watched a biology professor die in another one of those buildings, but that building's not there anymore. So, but it was there when I was there. Yeah, no, it's like freshman year of college, I watched a biology professor die of a heart attack. Like, I mean, I wouldn't like just sit by and watch. Like, there were paramedics there. Like, I wasn't like, it was one of those things, but it was like in a crowded area, and like it's only especially weird now because the building doesn't exist anymore because they tore down that building and replaced it with a new student union. So in that spot where it happened is the middle of a field now.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's so weird. And they're going to tear down the other building where my friend, well, he was pronounced dead at the hospital, but he might have been dead in his room. He was unresponsive in his room. I don't know. He died of meningitis in like 2002.
Yikes.
And so, bacterial. So it wasn't like the only vaccines that existed at the time were for viral. I don't know if I think there's better stuff now than there was when I was in college, but we had like a weird thing where it wasn't classified as an outbreak, but because 3 people died of meningitis, or I think one person survived and got really sick, but like there were 3 meningitis cases, but they were all complete, like in the spring of 2002 in the Chippewa Valley here in Wisconsin, but they were all different forms of meningitis.
That's weird.
They were like, I think maybe 2 of them were the same, but like the third was like they were unrelated strains, so it wasn't considered an outbreak. It was just this weird coincidence. But a friend of mine, Sean, not the Sean of Famicom Dojo, obviously, although a good friend growing up of Famicom Dojo host Vink, Famicom Dojo on nerdandtie.com. He passed away, and like I had like hung out with him like the day before. Like a bunch of us had hung out together the day before that he died. But he was found unresponsive in his dorm room, which was across the hall from the room where my other friend lived in. And when I went, because he died in the years that I was like, I took a few years off of college. I took like 3 years off of school in the middle. So I was not a student when this happened. And so all my friends who were students got like free antibiotics to deal with it. And me being the uninsured, just barely above minimum wage retail worker living in my haunted house, did not, and had to sit there worried about symptoms for days. So that was fun. American healthcare, it's great. But yeah, no, I later lived in that building for like 3 years.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so it's like I can't say that there's no ghosts in that building. I can say that.
Oh yeah.
Like I can say that the toilets flushed. Period. Well, actually, that building had push handles, but the science building that I usually look. Let me tell you, the secret to living in a boys' dorm is you go find if you need to sit down or do anything, and you don't want a disgusting toilet. What you do is you walk over to the science building, 3 buildings away. And you go up to like the highest floor there where there are only labs that get used like periodically and no GE classes. So no students go up there, and you use those bathrooms. 4th floor of Phillips, man. I think they're replacing that science building with a new science building. It's going to be where my old dorm was when they tear that down.
Right.
But yeah, no, 4th floor bathrooms in Phillips, man, they are the best bathrooms to use if you're a college student at UW Eau Claire, and you live on lower campus. If you live on upper campus, those lower campus bathrooms are far away unless you want to go during the day, during your school day. But like 4th floor Phillips, man, the only problem is they have automatic lights that turn off if there's no movement for a while. So if you're in there for a while and the lights will turn off on you in the stall, and so you have to get up and wave your arm around in the dark.
Oh my god.
To get the lights to turn back on.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So Yeah, it's, you think about technology and all this stuff. Again, one of these days, I want to break into one of my neighbors' apartments and put all their devices on smart plugs, and just like haunt their house while being alive, and just like by Wi-Fi start turning their lights on and off. Like,
that'd be hysterical.
Like swap out their light bulbs for Wi-Fi LEDs. Because then, like, if they turn their light on and off on the light switch, it'll just act normal. But once it connects to the Wi-Fi, I can make all their lights turn red.
You're evil. I like it.
I want to do this. Look, let me tell you. There's like, I know my Wi-Fi will hit every apartment in this building and all the apartments in the neighboring buildings just based on the number of Wi-Fi access points I see when I open up my thing. Like, it is crowded. And so I know that, like, I occasionally see other people's I've resisted the urge to map anyone else's Bluetooth speaker. I will admit this. I have done this at conventions where I've taken over, but like, I totally want to like map someone's Bluetooth speaker and just start playing old-timey music.
Oh my God.
I mean, it doesn't help that these buildings were probably only built in like the 50s or 60s that we live in, but maybe even the 70s. I'm looking at this construction. I don't know the history of the building I live in. But
bonus points if you use Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
I feel like that's not spooky enough. I feel like that's too, like, you would need a particularly spooky cover.
Oh no, if anyone has seen Insidious.
Oh, I haven't seen Insidious.
That'll work.
I haven't seen that movie, so I can't make claims for it.
Oh, there was a whole deal in the first Insidious movie with that song. So yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. But anyways, that's what I fantasize about doing. It's not like it's like this area of town is weird because at night you get the ghost phone, which is not a ghostly phenomenon. It's an acoustic phenomenon where it doesn't quite happen on my block. But if you go to my old block where I lived in a haunted house, you would hear it. And you hear it all over this area of town. There's, I think it's coming from either the hospital or the state office building. It's just the acoustics in this part of town are such where in the middle of the night, if a phone rings in this one office building, I think it's the state office building. It might be the hospital next to it. It's hard to locate where it's coming from because that's the thing about this phenomenon is how you can't tell what direction it's coming from. If a phone rings in the middle of the night at the right time of year, the acoustics in this area of town means you hear that phone for like a mile radius around these buildings. And
that's creepy.
It sounds like it's coming from all directions when you hear it. And it's like, it's that classic 80s and 90s digital ring. You know what I mean? Like that ring when they first stopped using real bells.
Yes. But they still did like the doodle thing with the digital tone to try and replicate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you hear that and like you just like we'll be walking down the street and it's like 2 a.m. and you hear a phone ring and it sounds like it's coming from all around you.
No.
And we just started referring to it as the ghost phone because we know it's not a ghost. It's not a ghost. It's literally just a weird acoustic because there's a lot of flat concrete up here. There's a lot of like flat concrete and then like solid like flat, a bunch of solid flat hard buildings that the sound just bounces off of. And so in like the middle of January when the atmospheric conditions are just right and like it's everything's got to be perfect. It's just suddenly like the ghost phone happens like when someone calls whatever phone number that is, and it's just hilarious because like it's one of those moments where like if someone like walks up to you in the middle of it and we're like, you're in a coma, you're asleep right now, you'd believe them because like it sounds like there's a phone ringing next to you but you're in the middle of an empty parking lot.
Oh geez.
It's hilarious. It's just it's so great.
That is really funny.
I live just outside the range of the ghost phone. But I lived within the range of the ghost phone when I was at when I was in the haunted house, like where like you'd be standing in the yard and you'd hear the phone. It's like that's not what my phone ringer sounds like. It's the ghost phone. It's just a weird acoustic thing, and it's my favorite like non-paranormal like the world feel like. But so when I keep in mind, like I always try to keep in mind. Whenever I'm looking at my own experiences, I try to keep the ghost phone in mind. like, just because I can't explain it doesn't mean it's not mundane, because I don't know where the ghost phone is. Right? Like, I don't know where that physical phone is ringing. It could be in a number of buildings on a number of floors. There's a big hospital right there. There's a state office building. The reason why I always blame it on the state office building is because I always felt like I heard it at any time of year, I could hear it when I was near the state office building. Like when I was within like a block of it, and you can hear it for like half a mile or a mile, like, you know, like in the right atmospheric conditions at like other times of the year. But I always felt like if I was within a block of the state office, but the state office building is right next to the hospital. So
well, that makes sense.
It's hard to say like exactly where it was coming from. But like, I just try to keep in mind that like whenever I'm spooked out by something, like, could this be like the ghost phone? Like, is there, like, when I've heard auditory phenomenon and things like that in like ghost experiences, like my first thought was, is there a way I could explain this with the ghost phone phenomenon? And if the answer is no, that's when I get freaked out.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Like again, I've felt this like tugging on my shirt at a certain part in the park multiple times, and I don't get scared of it. I'm just like, fuck off and don't bug me, kid. Like that's literally like, I'm just like, the height it's tugging on my shirt is like down near the bottom of my shirt. And so my instinct is leave me alone, kid.
Yeah.
That's my, like, I'm like, if my nephew was doing that, well, it depends on which nephew. One of them's in high school. If my high school age nephew was tugging me on my shirt like that, I would think it's weird. If my grade school age nephew was doing that, it would be a little bit more normal. Although he's getting tall. He's growing like a weed.
Aww.
I haven't seen him in, well, he lives, my sister lives in Maryland. So, because both she and her husband work in DC. And so, like, I haven't seen him since last Christmas, and I've been seeing photos, and he is just getting so tall, and it's just like, oh, man, like I'm not ready for that. It's yeah.
Take the fertilizer out of his shoes. Stop that. Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to remember the ghost phone myself, because, you know, even in a building that, you know, has some acknowledged paranormal activity, it is important to maintain that perspective. I'm actually kind of glad that bathroom's not haunted, because I really like that one.
The bathroom might still be haunted.
No, the downstairs one is. That's why I've been going upstairs. Because the downstairs one is haunted as crap, and I don't want to go in there by myself.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, it's you talk about your office place, and I'm like, the first one sounds like a ghost. You know, the sounds, the movement, the way that is. Like, you were alone in there, so you'd know whether or not it was your own clothes or not. And you know, it's like, that sounds like a ghost. The second one sounds like an automated flush system that is periodically clearing itself. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but you know, then you get down to the first floor, and the stall that's all the way at the end has a door that likes to open and shut by itself, and it has like, there's one of those like row light fixtures behind all of the stalls, but the section over that one refuses to stay lit. Like, they've replaced that bulb I don't know how many times since I've been there, and it always burns out within 2 weeks. It's just, and they think maybe it's the circuit or something. I don't know if they've tried to fix that.
I mean, old wiring, electrical stuff can blow out. Are these incandescent or are they fluorescent, or are they LED bulbs that are going out?
I think they're fluorescents.
Okay. Yeah, fluorescent, they can be finicky with bad electric.
Yeah, and that's part of like what I'm thinking it is, because I know in other places in the building they have issues with that. But it's very odd that it's this one place where the light won't stay on and the door opens and closes by itself. And it's just, there is a bad vibe in that stall, and like no one uses it. You can always tell if someone is a visitor to our building because they'll actually use that stall. Or the one next to it. All the rest of us,
the longest resident of all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If anyone's there who's actually working there, it's like, nope, the one's closest to the door, and that is it. We don't even go down that end of the room.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I'd much rather use the non-haunted one upstairs. So, yeah.
You know what's funny is that the fear of that end of the room might be making that end of the room feel more scary.
Oh, I'm sure that's part of it, but it's also just
psychic
like
effect. No,
yeah,
I mean, I'm saying it might be making it more haunted.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's like part of it because thought forms and egregores are a thing. It's just it's very like the first day I walked in there, it was like, what? I'm gonna go to another bathroom.
Oh yeah, no, it's the first ghost I ever saw. I'm 100% convinced was created by the group belief in the ghost existing.
Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, no, it's because every legend about that ghost I proved was historically wrong. Because it's high school theaters are all supposed to be haunted. All theaters are supposed to be haunted. Blah 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 blah. But there was a legend about a ghost, and I saw the ghost, so I know the ghost is real. But I looked up all the legends and researched in the local library and went through like high school yearbooks. There was a legend about a student dying in what was at the time the gymnasium, which used to be on that end of the building before they renovated it. And I mean, that building was weird because like there were old hallways that were just like walled off, and then you'd find a door, and like it was like you'd find a section of hallway with lockers and stairs leading up into a wall that had been turned into a quote unquote storage area. And it was just like,
and you had that tunnel.
Yeah, the tunnel under the road, and there was the old locker rooms, which were also turned into storage, which were by where the old gym was, which is where the theater was. So, like, it was historically accurate to say the gym was in that area of the building where the student supposedly died on the bleachers. Except I looked it up. No student with the name of the fictional student ever existed at the university, at the high school, in the history of the high school. I looked at every yearbook going back from the beginning of the high school through the renovation. Not a single student with the name of with the last name of Fitzsimmons. Okay, it's like there was no Fritz Fitzsimmons. There was no not a real person. Not a real person at any point in the school's history was there a student with that name ever. And like it was just like I went through and I was like there was no in memoriam shit. There was nothing in any of that. Like none of that existed. And I was like, the whole legend is bunk. But I know there's a ghost because I saw it.
That is bonkers.
So I'm 100% convinced that was something that was created because a bunch of people believe. I think that most theaters are haunted because a bunch of people think that all theaters are haunted. That's it. That
checks out.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% certain that the only reason why all theaters are haunted is because everybody thinks all theaters are haunted, especially people who work and do stuff in theaters. They become haunted because everyone there is
prophecy.
Everyone there is convinced there's a ghost, so either one shows up or one is created.
Oh, geez. It just shows up with like a formal hat and briefcase in hand. I hear you're looking for a ghost.
This episode is going to be so long. So
it is like 2 hours.
So folks, I'm going to put this conversation last. I might even drop a conversation. Maybe I'll only talk to 2 people this episode. I don't know. The future hasn't happened for me, but it's the past for you, the listener, because time is not a linear construct. No, it's just editing is a thing. So I'm going to put this last. So who knows how long this episode's going to be, but we have definitely talking to your ears for long enough. So I'm going to thank Bree for being here. And
always a pleasure.
And I'll head into I'll record the stuff that comes after this later, but you, the listener, will hear it now. Thank you for listening to this month's episode of BS-Free Witchcraft. It was great to have you guys with me again. Remember, this show is brought to you by the support from listeners like you. And you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TRAEGORN. That's patreon.com/TRAEGORN. And by supporting the show on Patreon, you get access to these episodes a whole week early. You could have been listening to this episode days ago, but now you have to listen to it now, like everybody else. I'd like to, of course, give a special shout out to my witchy shout out supporter level, including Lindsay Dosey, Bruce Norville, and Meg Tenholzen. Thank you guys for your support. And look, I know money's tight, and, not everyone can afford to contribute to a show like this. And so if you just want to help support the show in general, first off, follow the show on social media. You can find me on Twitter at TRAEGORN. I'm on Tumblr at TRAEGORN.tumblr.com. And you can follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/BS-Free Witchcraft. I love you guys, though. And so, just share this episode with your friends. Pass it around. Force them to listen to it. Just like, what I'm saying is, you lure your friend into a room with a speaker, and you lock them in there, and you just play like the episodes on loop until they've heard all of them. And that's how you help people. That's how you help your friends. Everybody appreciates it when you do that, and you should don't do that, please don't. Okay, so with that, next month we will be back, probably actually with a long episode. I don't know, The Craft just came out. I gotta watch that. Who knows what we're gonna talk about next month, though. In any case, until that time comes around, thank all magicians. I will talk to you guys next week. Oh, and join our Discord. We said at the top of the episode, but I'm going to say it here at the end of the episode. A bunch of us are on the Nerd and Tie Network Discord. BS-Free Witchcraft, if you haven't figured out by the fact that I've been plugging shows all episode, is a part of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. It's a bunch of podcasts run by cool people like Hex Positive, which you can find more at nerdandtie.com/hex. Hosted by Bree NicGarran, which is another witchcraft podcast on this very network, full of really cool stuff. Or you can listen to Let's Be Legendary, an actual play podcast that Cris Sass-Council, who you just heard, is on. They are on that show. Or you can listen to Stormwood and Associates at nerdandtie.com/Stormwood with Gen Prock and myself, because you apparently like listening to me. You made it this far into the episode. You apparently like listening to me. So I play a couple of characters on that show, and Ken also plays characters, and I GM about 50% of the time. It's a good show. Or you can listen to the Nerd and Tie podcast if you really want to hear about geek and convention news, which is that show has gotten so weird in the year of coronavirus with myself and Gen Prock, and also Nick Izumi, who's also on Stormwood. Anyways, you can find all the shows at nerdandtie.com. And if you want to talk to us, though, we have a Discord. And you can join our Discord by finding an invite at nerdandtie.com/Discord. And you can just, yell at me all day long. Did I say something stupid this episode? Do you disagree with me? Do you disagree with anybody who was on this episode? Everybody on this episode is on the Discord. Because that's where the cool kids are. And they let me sit with them. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so thanks, Magicians, for tuning in this month. I'll talk to you all next month. And time for me to run away.